I read 5 books in May and June, and in this video, I'm gonna rate them 1 to 5 stars and give my spoiler-free thoughts on each of them. This video is sponsored by Shopify, but more on that later. Let's get right into it. The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, 4.7 out of 5 stars. So this is a gritty, character-driven, epic fantasy where a barbarian, a torturer, and a self-absorbed nobleman find their fates colliding in a world on the brink of war. It's brutal, it's funny, and it's very morally gray. AKA the protagonists don't always do good things, but you still like them and kind of root for them. Okay, yeah, you guys are right. You guys are right. This book is awesome, and I loved every morsel of it. I love the writing style from my guy, Joe Abercrombie and Fitch. It's fast-paced, intense, dark, gory, but has a ton of sarcastic humor and dark humor, really dark humor. I always talk and kind of brag about how I don't audibly laugh at books. If I think something's funny, I kind of usually just smile and give maybe a nose snort. But this book had me chuckling. Call me Chuckly Cheese reading this book. And it's not like a comedy book. It's an epic fantasy book that's just that sarcastic and humorous. And for that reason, Abercrombie has skyrocketed up my list of favorite authors already. So this book has 3 POVs, and they're all pretty fucked up people, if I'm being frank. Logan Ninefingers is like a brute who has this reputation of being this bloodthirsty killer. Then you got Inquisitor Glockta, who is a crippled guy that is a detective of sorts, but he just absolutely loves torturing people. I wish I loved anything as much as Inquisitor Glockta loves torturing people. And then we got Giselle Van Luthar, who's this pompous, better-than-thou nobleman. That's honestly super high-level stuff because you spend so much time with these 3. And I remember hearing those quick definitions of the characters and thinking okay. You just gotta read it and you'll understand. They're actually so fun to follow. Moving forward, when I hear a book is character driven, I'm comparing it to this. This is my bar. Because honestly, not a lot happens in this book. Probably considered a slow burn type book. But I was infatuated with it. So much so that my voice is cracked. I was infatuated with it because the character work was so good. And it was so funny. Again, it's not like a comedy book, but it had me chuckling. Chuckly cheese. But yeah, speaking of characters, it's kind of like what I said with Rage of Dragons. There are so many characters that you get introduced to with hard to pronounce names and titles from hard to pronounce made up places. Every 5 or 10 pages, there's a new character that you have to learn about. So that takes a bit to get used to. And in this video, I'm actually talking about the books I've most recently read first. So I'm doing a little bit different. This book was so much different than the previous book I read, which is called The Women, where there were 8 total characters and only 3 of them actually matter. In this book, you got 20 total characters. So yeah, for The Blade Itself, it's hard to keep track of all the different names, different titles. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just something to note for my fellow fava bean brained readers because it can be confusing at first. So I've been recommended this book so many times, but only recently did I hear people recommend the audiobook from a couple people, not even a lot of people. But I'll tell you, this audiobook slaps. It's a banger audiobook for sure. This is top 3 audiobooks I've ever listened to, and it might not be number 2 or 3. Honestly though, is this the most underrated audiobook narration performance of all time? If Stephen Pacey hasn't gotten enough flowers, I'm gonna give him a whole garden. This was such a great audiobook that it made me not even want to read the physical book. Figured I was doing it a disservice to read it in my voice. So I listened to at least 50% of this 550 something page book. In terms of chapters, they were sort of longer chapters, but I didn't want them to end. And I didn't have a POV that I disliked reading, like I have in some other series that I really love. But yeah, the POVs we get are really fun. In my head, Glockta is personality-wise, a more twisted Severo meets Tyrion Lannister. Everybody said I would love Glockta, and look, I do. I like him a lot. He's a great guy. Not really, but you know what I mean. But I actually think Giselle is sneaky my most enjoyed POV to read because he's just so full of himself. And the narrator just kind of makes fun of him for that in a way. I keep saying it, but this book is so sarcastic and has so much dry humor and is self-deprecative. And I feel that is displayed most with Giselle's POV. This is definitely not a plot-driven story. I get that now. At no point did I know where this book was going, or even if there was an underlying plot. There wasn't a ton of action or combat or battle or any of the synonyms that you would say for fighting, but there still was a feeling of tension throughout the book and something, I don't know, building in the background. It is a fantasy book, so there is like a tiny bit of magic that we see in this book at least. And I know I make this comparison a lot, but the whole vibe felt kind of Game of Thronesy to me. The reason I'm making the comparison is because of kind of the sparse use of the world's magic and how there are other non-human creatures in the world. Like there's almost like a version of the White Walker in this. But yeah, I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna stop there with the Game of Thrones comparison. I already dropped Tyrion. But even though there wasn't a ton of magic action or even like events happening, I had a blast watching everything develop, listening to everything develop, reading everything develop. I really didn't want it to end. This reading experience was like going on a first date with somebody and knowing right away within like an hour of meeting that I'm gonna marry this person. It was love at first chapter. And I know I've been glazing this book, Horde, but I'm glazing because everyone told me to just get through the first book and the series gets way better. But I loved this book. It's a 4.7 out of 5 if you didn't hear me before. So I didn't have to get through it. I didn't want it to end. I'll say it again, it's just fun vibes. It's a great time. Not much happens. I love the wit. I love the writing style. And Joe Abercrombie just made me love these irredeemable characters. And I cannot wait to read the second installment of the First Law trilogy. I'm actually not kidding when I say Red Rising's gotta watch his ass, because it might have a run for its money. With how much I loved this book one, reminds me of how much I loved the first Red Rising book. And yeah, I can't wait to see what books 2 and 3 have in store. It's got Cooper Flag potential. Carry Kittles. Restrictive sleeves. Chris Duhon. Yup. The Woman by Kristen Hanna. 3.7 out of 5 stars. A young nurse is thrust into the chaos of the Vietnam War and must redefine her sense of identity, loyalty, and resilience during the war and after coming home. It's a super emotional story about friendship, trauma, and overlooked voices in history. Yeah, I put a hat on. My hair was looking wild. But yeah, I found this book at a local library during my book challenge vlog video. You can watch it after this video. It had like a 4.5 Goodreads rating, so I was psyched. And then like a couple days after, I saw this video from Dukes of Lit, who was raving about this book. And yeah, the video sold me on it. Bumped it up right to the tippity top of my TBR. And from that video, I could derive that I was in for a emotionally painful read. This book follows Frankie, who is a sheltered young woman from a privileged California upbringing. She's searching for purpose and identity, kind of lives in the shadow of her brother and the men in the family who have served in previous wars. But then she realizes that women can be heroes too. And that's really the theme of this book. So Frankie joins the Vietnam War alongside her brother, but she joins as a nurse. And really she just wants to make her father and her family in general proud. She doesn't really realize what war is like though, especially the Vietnam War. But when she gets there, she realizes how crazy it is. So this is kind of like a fish out of water story a little bit, but not like a quirky, fun, goofy fish out of water story. This is like a heartbreaking, emotionally painful fish out of water story. But in terms of the writing style, it's super easy to read. Short sentences, like believable dialogue that sounds like it's probably what people talked like in the 60s and 70s. Kristen Hanna, the author, moves things along quick and does a really great job of conveying emotion. Like in one of the first couple chapters when Frankie arrives in Vietnam, it's not a spoiler, trust me, it's the whole point of the book. You can just like feel the anxiety and danger and hurriedness and panic of everything. It was like watching Uncut Gems. Have you seen Uncut Gems? If you have, you know what I'm talking about. It really paints the picture and feelings of what being a nurse or like a doctor in Vietnam must have felt like. How literally every single day was filled with horrors, but you also try to like maintain some sense of normalcy too. And you kind of get numb to the things happening around you. So what was really cool, in my opinion, is like as a reader, you experience these horrors of war, but in a different way. Because you're not on the battlefield, you're in the hospital. So don't expect to read about like any combat or, you know, battle scene. You'll read about the aftermath, which is, you know, equally horrifying, at least to read. So half of this story is about the war, and half of it is about the reception the soldiers got after the war from the United States. And that was honestly equally as painful to read, especially the reception of women. Like I said, this book touches on a lot of hard things to read. It's a very traumatic book, and it feels like the main character can't catch a break. I could definitely see this book being adapted into a movie. I'd be surprised if it isn't already in the works. I could like visualize some of these scenes on a big screen, which is a testament to this book. But I do feel like it can be a little bit repetitive. I feel like it could have been like 100 pages shorter. It had some longish chapters that I didn't think the length was necessary. And it really just follows Frankie, our main character. We get like a handful of supporting characters, which is nice because it's pretty easy to follow. Like, it's not like the Blade itself when like I need to like almost create a diagram of who's who. We only get a handful of characters, so it's pretty easy to follow. And we do get a little time with Frankie's best friends. And I'll tell you, I need friends like Frankie's. They are absolute ride or dies, and I respect it. But speaking of those friends, I actually think it would have been nice to get at least one of their POVs, because this book is called The Women, plural, but we really only hear from one woman's POV. But it just would have been nice to get a different during and after experience of another person, because it was pretty high level with the friends. Like, we didn't get a ton of character development with them. I thought the ending was, you know, it actually made me tear up a little bit. And overall, I just gained a lot of empathy for Vietnam veterans and women who were in Vietnam. Before reading, I really only knew the surface level stuff about the Vietnam War and, you know, like everything surrounding it. I'm not like a history guy or a history buff or anything, but this made me interested in learning more about history. Oh, and I actually listened to like 40% of this book too. It was a solid audiobook. Jeff Teague. Buckets. Rasul Butler. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. 4.1 out of 5 stars. A disciplined young woman bound to a life of ritual and a cynical painter battling humanoid nightmares in a neon-lit city find their worlds unexpectedly linked, and together they must unravel a strange, reality-bending mystery that neither of them really understands. And I didn't really understand for a long time in this book. So I read this book after I read the book I'm going to talk about next, which is Chain Gang All-Stars. And because Chain Gang All-Stars was another like emotionally tough read like The Women, I honestly just wanted to read something set in a different world. I needed some escapism, and this hit the spot. It absolutely hit the spot. Super cool world building. And what's cooler than world building? How about worlds building, plural? Because the two main characters, Painter and Yumi, live in two completely different worlds. Painter's world is always dark, and there's like neon lights that provide the lighting for the city. And then Yumi's world has a red sun, and like the ground is always scorching hot, like And as a character, Yumi is like so pristine and innocent, and so she has a lot of fish out of water experiences. I don't know why I'm saying the word plural and the term fish out of water so much in this video. So we get both of their POVs, and the two POVs are narrated from a character that is outside of the story, and he's giving us all the goss. I assume it must be a character from the Cosmere or something that I haven't met yet because I've only read Mistborn, but the narrator is kind of like self-deprecating and funny and brutally honest when talking about Yumi and Painter. And overall, I think the best word to describe this book is cute. Or fun. It just felt good to read Brandon Sanderson again, honestly. Feels like reconnecting with an old pal. His writing is just so conversational and so easy to read. And the audiobook was pretty solid too. Had two different narrators doing the different Yumi and Painter. I will say this book starts off kind of slowish. It's just like a lot of world building and character building, but it gets going. It starts chugging along. I guess that's what a Sanderlanche is, you know? It just starts off slow and, you know, everything kind of happens in the tail end. But like The Women, I do think that this could have been like 80 pages less long. I think the length is fine because it is more of like a cozy read. At least a lot of it is, in my opinion. Kind of reminded me of like a silly 2000s rom-com at points, like one that Hugh Grant might be in, or Ryan Gosling. Cause it's you and me and the Nightmare Painter, and I can't keep my eyes off of you and me and the Nightmare Painter, and I don't know why. Brandon Sanderson. Wait, you actually liked my singing and want me to perform an original song about Shopify? Well, okay.
You can be an entrepreneur. Back in 2018, I was diagnosed with a rare disease. Made videos all about eating gluten-free, and 7 years later, that's my J.O.B. Entrepreneur. Followers said sell merch and to sell it online and to sell it in person. I use Shopify's set of tools to set up an online shop that rules. To add all the inventory to my product, create all the shipping labels when you buy them, to use their tap and chip reader at expos. Shopify does everything, I guess so.
All right, that's enough of that. But seriously, I cannot stress how crucial Shopify is to my business. From sending email blasts to communicating with customers in the Shopify inbox, it just does everything. And if I can figure it out, you can too. So take the first step of starting that business that you've put off for this long because Shopify makes it easy, and use this trial link when you do so. But in the meantime, let's get back to yapping about some books. Chain Gang All-Stars by Nanakwame Ajabrenya, 4.2 out of 5 stars. In a near future America, incarcerated people fight to the death on live television for a shot at freedom in a corporate-run blood sport. It's suspenseful, action-packed, emotional. It's a look at what we get entertainment from. It's a look at violence and systemic injustice. So this book starts off hot. It's like the surface of Yumi's planet. There's lots of action, there's lots of combat, there's lots of battle, and there's lots of testosterone. The tea was through the roof. Rage of Dragons, who? To paint the picture of the concept of the beginning, at least, the prisoners in this book like fight one-on-one in a football field sized battlefield with a huge sold-out crowd watching, with a jumbotron and an announcer. It's almost like a juiced up televised version of UFC or something, with much higher stakes, because the stakes are life and death. And the prisoners have like magnetic cuffs beneath their skin that can like link them or lock them to the ground forcefully. The author, Nanakwame Ajabrenya, really describes the characters well and makes them seem like gods or like superstars when they're fighting, because that's how the public see them, which is like such a weird dichotomy because they're literally incarcerated. So it's interesting to know, like, in this dystopian world of this book, that these people in jail are so popular culturally, and they're like wearing stuff that advertises corporation, but they're literally in prison for all sorts of different crimes. And yeah, they're fighting for the death. If they lose the fight, they're dead. Most of the characters we follow in this book were sentenced to death or like 25 years or more in prison. And the reason that they're in this this game show type thing called Chain Gang All-Stars is because they were given the option to opt into this program where they can fight for their freedom. And after 3 years of fighting, if they survive, they can obtain their freedom, which people rarely do. This book is written in the third person with multiple POVs, like almost 10, but really like 3 or 4 main character POVs, at least in my opinion. Hurricane Stax and Loretta Thurwar are 2 of the main ones. They're both women who are in this program. One of them is almost at the 3-year mark and is about to be released, so it's interesting. She only has like a few weeks left, but has a couple fights left. And again, I'm gonna reiterate, like if she loses these fights, so the stakes are high here. But some of the other POVs are other links in the chain, aka members of a team. We get new members and seasoned members. We also follow like an activist. We follow fans of Chain Gang All-Stars. We follow people through their transition into this program and kind of see why they ended up in it. And it's just super cool to get all these perspectives. I thought that was so unique and such a smart choice. I really liked how it was written. It was super easy to understand. It flows well. The fight scenes were really cool and pretty gory, and it builds a lot of tension because of the stakes being so high. You get closer with these characters. I'd say sometimes the writing feels almost lyrical or poetic is a word I like to describe with writing like this. And the reason I say that is I don't know, each POV is like so distinct. It reminds me a little bit about reading like from the POVs of Mistborn, like how in Mistborn, like Spook has his own specific voice that you could just tell from a mile away. And even Sazed and Kelsier are so distinct with the way that they read on the page. There's a few characters here who are just, it's very obvious when you're reading them. Like you can just read a sentence and be like, that's Loretta Thurwar, or that's Hurricane Stax. I personally liked reading better than listening to this one. Not to say the audiobook wasn't good, it was definitely solid, but to me it felt a little bit more performative, and reading this felt more raw and emotional to me. Like it just felt like that was a more fitting experience of this book. There was a specific chapter in this book that was crazy brutal. It's one of the hardest and like most I've cringed reading, because it was that like difficult to hear and read and experience as a reader. I mean, there was definitely a few chapters like that in here, but there's one specifically that was crazy, and I'm curious if you guys could guess the one I'm talking about. It's just really graphic and painful. But yeah, there's just some crazy stuff that happens in here, and really interesting explorations of concepts, because it really is a commentary on the systems in America, and it's obviously like a dystopian version of it, but it does actually include like little tidbits and factoids of like real life that I thought were really interesting to read, that were like new to me, and so I learned things reading this. Overall, it was a difficult book to read in many ways, but it was an absolute page turner and engaging the whole way through. For a book about a TV show that pits inmates against each other to the fight to the death, it was actually a little less combat than you would expect, especially with how this book starts off. Like, I was like, oh, it's just another Razor Dragons. We're gonna be like fighting the whole time. It's not that. It's a lot of tension in this book and a lot of anticipation for things. But again, this is just a super interesting exploration of people and how they would be or react in this dystopian version of our world. Yeah, this book made me think about a lot, and it is a book I will remember for sure. And I'll definitely want to read more from this author. Dungeon Crawler Carl, Carl's Doomsday Scenario by Matt Dinneman. 4.1 out of 5 stars. Carl and his cat, Donut, continue their chaotic, violent, and hilarious dissension through a deadly alien-run dungeon game show. More boss battles, unique worlds, and snarkiness ensues. Yeah, so this book picks up right where book 1 left off, except that I had to look up the word pugilism almost immediately because Matt Dinneman just drops the word pugilism like 15 times in the first couple chapters. Like, we're all supposed to expect what pugilism means. This book has to have the highest pugilism usage rate in book history. Pugilism was getting some serious burn early on, and it means the profession or hobby of boxing. Just saved you a Google search. In DCC 2, there's a lot of explaining power-ups and walking us through video game upgrade decisions. There's more and different world building. It's like circus themed in this book, and I'm expecting future books are going to be like different themes because they're a different level of the dungeon. We also staple a side character from book 1 as important in book 2, and we get more personality and development from them than we saw in the first. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. We got like the storyline of them going through the ranks of the dungeon and building their social media footprints. But we also get other storylines, like about other creatures in the dungeon and like their gods and their conspiracy theories. We get more information about the other characters' storylines that are being broadcasted. There's tons of new NPCs, non-playable characters, that are way more advanced. We have more personal storylines coming up with Carl and Donut and the side character that I just mentioned. Oh yeah, we also have another side character who gets a ton of action in this book, who's new to this story. So yeah, just a lot of world building and intrigue building. But honestly, I felt like a lot of this book was talking about like upgrades and skills and stuff, which obviously probably comes with the territory of reading a lit RPG book, but I figured I'd mention it. That being said, it definitely flies by to read. This is the shortest of the Dungeon Crawler Carl books at 360-ish pages. I just got the third book and it was like twice the size of this. But yeah, if you liked the first book, you're gonna like this one too. Matt Dinneman's writing is funny and snarky and humorous and wacky and interesting and thoughtful. Like, it's all that stuff in this book too. So at no point did I not enjoy reading this. I could read about Carl and Donut's hijinks and tomfoolery all day. But sometimes it is hard to keep up with all the different upgrades, rules, skills, classes, and it kind of just feels like words on the page sometimes. And for me, I just like trust that it will be explained further and more in the future when it actually matters, and usually it is, which is good. Overall, I'd say I like book 2 a little bit less than book 1, probably because it wasn't as new and unique to me. It's very on par with book 1 though. It's just like less boss fights and less overall action, but more like seeds being developed and nurtured. Like I just said, I recently bought book 3 of the 6 books that are out, I think. So I'm excited to read that soon, although I'm probably gonna listen to most of it because with this series, you wanna listen to as much as you can because the narrator, Jeff Hayes, might as well change his last name to Bagwell with the amount of times he knocks it out of the park with that audiobook narration.
Life of a legend, just a day in the life. Might slide on ya, I ain't staying the night. I ain't pick cards, I'm just playing them right. Photo shoot tomorrow, they gon' pay for the flight. Amazing the height, I'm able to reach from just rapping. Get it all legit, my so trapping. Catch me in the lab, I'm the player with the game plan, and I stick to it, we are really not the same, man.
And I'm gonna end it with what I'm currently reading but haven't finished yet. Billy Summers by Stephen King. Not rated out of 5. Yeah, I just wanted to include this because I'm currently reading this. I'm about like 100 pages through of the 500-ish pages. But I'm gonna save my thoughts for the next bi-monthly recap, or let me know if I should make a dedicated video on Billy Summers, because I posted about it being my first Stephen King book I've ever read, and people seem like they either loved it or were disappointed by it. So yeah, twist my wrist. I'll make a whole dedicated video about Billy Summers if you want me to. Other than that, let me know what I should read after Billy Summers and for the rest of the summer. What are some good summer reads? Some good Billy Summers reads? Subscribe for more book stuff.